Hey, we're live. Welcome to a special episode of Team Arrivals podcast. We've got a little bit of a shakeup this week. We've got Ron still on his hiatus. We've got Pete, who is actually at Star Wars convention tonight, and I actually should be there. But you've got two of the four tonight. You've got myself and Brecklyn, and then we've got a couple of special guests who also do a podcast with Brecklyn. We've got Blake Root and Jacob Foot. So Foot or Footy or Foot or Foot. Okay.
Like the extremity.
They are all a part of the Whose Division Is It Anyways podcast, which you should also check out. You guys do yours on Tuesday nights?
Sunday nights.
Yeah, we just moved it to Sunday at 7 p.m.
Okay. Sunday night, 7 p.m. Check out their Facebook page. They're on Twitter as well. And we'll get into that towards the end of the show where you can find everybody. But for now, welcome. And you know what? We've got 0 viewers, and I need to share this on Facebook right now. So,
that might be a little helpful. That's all right.
Let's get into this week's topics. Actually, what are we going to talk about this week? Because we've got a Brewers fan with us this week, right?
We do.
That's true.
Y'all can pepper me with whatever questions you have.
Gross, man. Oh, I know I live in Wisconsin and I have to deal with my neighbors, but damn. So
now we've infiltrated your podcast.
Yeah, that is true. So that is okay. Let's good week for the Cubbies.
Yeah, they just won their first series. They seem to be on the up and up with their pitching. Their starting pitchers went 7+ innings the last 2 games, and they look like they're coming into their own a little bit.
Yeah, Cole Hamels throws 8 innings this today, 1 earned run on a homer with the wind blowing out. I mean, that's tough to do. Yeah. The bullpen hasn't given up a run in over 18 innings in the last few games. So it looks like the pitching is getting right. The only thing there's really to complain about in the last few games is the top of the order really hasn't done a whole lot, but the bottom of the order is raking. And I'm saying it now, Wilson Contreras is going to be in that MVP finalist. I mean, the dude looks good. He's probably having the year that he wanted to have last year. So, I know he did well at the beginning of last year. I mean, he made the All-Star team, and then he kind of crashed. So, hopefully he's kind of learned from what went on last year, and he'll be able to continue with what he's doing. I mean, obviously, what he's doing right now isn't sustainable, but hopefully by next, by the second half of the season, he'll be able to keep it all together. So,
yeah, I largely agree with that. I'd hesitate to put him in the MVP conversation just yet, or we're still less than a month in, but I think he has definitely got the potential to get back to the All-Star game. Just because he just has had really hot starts the last couple of years, and his real test is just going to be not fading down the stretch, honestly, because he's a really high energy ball player, and he, baseball is a long season, so he's got to figure out how to keep that energy up all year and not get complacent.
Right. Okay, so Brecklyn, I actually need you to share with me that link so I can get it out on our Facebook page.
I already got it on our Facebook page, so that's okay.
Thank you, viewer.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it should be appearing that our technical difficulties will not get in the way for what we're wanting to do. But if you're listening to this live, this is on the Team Arrivals page now, as well as the Cardinals Podcast Network page.
Okay, so I've got the share in my page. Okay. All right, so you know what? You know who really had an awesome beginning of or actually end of the week were the Brewers.
Oh my
They
God.
had a great.
You want to talk about a disaster? Like, you lose 3 games to the Mike Troutless Angels. I mean, those 3 games were very strange. I stayed up to watch all of them because I'm a masochist, and watching these games we relied so heavily on that bullpen, right? You know, the bullpen of doom that we had last year with JJ, Knable, Hader, who's still awesome, but instead of all-stars, Corey Knable and Jeremy Jeffress, we are stuck with Indians cast off Alex Wilson and blockbuster offseason trade Alex Claudio, which is not great. I think the biggest issue with the Brewers right now, and it's going to wear on them throughout the entire season, is that they have 3 guys in their starting rotation who are starting, like they're entering their first ever full season of being an MLB starter. Corbin Burns was electric in the playoffs last year, like out of the bullpen. He started all through like AAA.
Right. You have 2 pitchers that were part of that Hader lockdown unit that have moved to as starters, which is kind of scary because one, they've never pitched 200 innings in a season, which is usually about expected for a starting pitcher. Usually pitchers will, I want 30 to 35 starts and I want to be able to pitch 200 innings.
Mm-hmm.
These guys have never pitched, I believe, over 80 innings in a season in their career. Which is kind of scary for a first-year pitcher that's starting. So, I mean, you can only rely on Hader so much.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of that, I mean, you don't want to do to him what the Cubs did to Steve Cishek last year, where you pitch him 70-plus innings in a season as a reliever, because by the time you get to the playoffs, his arm's probably going to fall off.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you have to get to the playoffs first. What I'm predicting is that if you've been following Jimmy Nelson's story at all, Jimmy Nelson, he tore his labrum in 2017. He's been out ever since. He's pitching down in Arizona right now, and he started a couple days ago, and his breaking stuff looks electric, which, I mean, granted, it's against low-level minor league guys, but the movement is there, the velocity is getting there, and he's getting back to being a major league starting pitcher. I predict that when Jimmy comes back, hopefully in June, fingers crossed, they're going to take Burns and put him back in the bullpen, because Burns has not looked very comfortable in a starting role. He struck out in that first start against the Cardinals back, in the opening week. He struck out 11 and gave up 4 home runs. And that home run bug has been biting the Brewers all year already. They've already given up 21 in 11 games, something like that. Or they through their first 11 games, they gave up 21, which seems like a lot. So that home run bug is going to be biting them for a lot of the season. I think that's going to be a big problem. And I think that Burns is probably not entirely ready to transition directly into a starting role. That's just my prediction, but it seems feasible enough.
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because when they had that Cubs series in Milwaukee, what was that, the 5th, 6th, and 7th of April? Mm-hmm. They were relatively good games besides the Cubs bullpen giving up those runs. Mm-hmm. The Cubs bullpen is just average. The Cubs win that series they probably take 2 out of 3 out of that series. Mm-hmm. And which is bad and good. Bad that, the Cubs weren't able to lock it down, but also good to know that the way that they're playing now, they know that they can beat the Brewers.
Oh yeah, and I think this series this weekend the Brewers have is going to be incredibly interesting because the Dodgers are coming off that 4-game sweep at the hands of the Cardinals. The Brewers are coming off that 4-game sweep or 3-game sweep from the Angels. So they're both battered, and these are supposed to be, two of, if not the 2 top teams in the NL this year.
Right.
So I think this series is going to be very telling on the direction of both those clubs. I mean, we don't really talk about the Dodgers here, but the Dodgers are always going to be that sticking point. Like, they're quote unquote the team to beat. They've won the last 2 pennants. So you always have to keep tabs on them. And I think this series is going to be a very telling in terms of the direction both these clubs are going to go moving out of April.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So did I hear that right? I tried to keep up on some baseball this week outside of the Cubs, a little bit of the Brewers, but the Cardinals just get swept in their last series.
They swept
the other way.
Yeah.
We swept the Dodgers. Yeah. Which
fantastic.
was not my prediction, but I am very happy with it. We did it despite anything Marcell Ozuna tried to do otherwise.
Complete with the Spider-Man wall climb.
So we got to talk about that because
We definitely do, Elliott.
that was a little bit of what I witnessed this week. And I got to tell you, for the last 4 years, since about 2015, there has been a Cardinals player that has given us a GIF that keeps on giving, whether it was Colton Wong or it was somebody else doing something in the outfield where they either trip themselves and fall over it, or I believe it was Colton Wong that gave us the trip where his legs were cockeyed to make it look like an L, so that they lost that that you put some, if you put OSE in there, you could just say lose. And in that, what was he doing? Was he not paying attention to where that ball was going? I mean, because it reminded me of a football receiver going out for a pass and not turning around until the last minute and then getting hit in the head by the pass.
It felt like he just kind of listened for the sound of the ball off the bat and assumed it was going over the fence, and then looked back and realized it wasn't going to be close.
Short by 5 feet.
Well, my thing too is that there's that, but I don't think I've been the only person that's been riding the Ozuna get off my team train. And so I think that he almost had the mentality of, okay, I've got to do really well. I've got to, go get it. And so anytime that he thought he had the chance to, be Spider-Man and do one of his, because he's climbed the wall and caught it before. I mean, you search Ozuna climb the wall and you're going to see a bunch of highlights of where he does it successfully. And he looks like a Gold Glover and it looks great. But that ain't what happened this week.
You know what? If you search Ozuna climb the wall now, all you're going to find is him falling flat on his face and missing that pop-up that should have been just caught on the warning track.
Yep.
It should have just been I wouldn't necessarily say a routine fly, but it should have just been him running to the warning track and turning around and catching that ball, because obviously he beat it to the wall. He just couldn't
by plenty
wall enough to catch that ball.
My favorite part of that GIF is if you look back on it, or just that video in general, you look back on it and you see Marcell Ozuna climb the wall and fall down, and then you look at the Dodgers bullpen. And they're just losing it.
Laughing. Yeah.
It's hysterical.
Well, Bader comes over to kind of check on Ozuna to make sure that he's okay, because he fumbled over his feet falling to the ground. And I mean, it's not going to feel good. But Bader, after kind of bending down for a second, it's almost as though you could just see him going, "You stupid."
No, my favorite part of that is with the Cardinals. I think it's the Cardinals or the Dodgers announcers. They were like, "I don't know if he's hurt or embarrassed."
Yeah. Well, it was
probably a little bit of both.
You can almost see him tearing up. Well, Mike Shannon on the Cardinals broadcast, he said, well, not only did he make a fool of himself, but now he's hurt. Imagine if that was something to where he twisted his ankle or something actually happened where he was out after that. Could you imagine that being the legacy of why you're no longer in the outfield? Dexter Fowler would have no one talk about him ever again because of Ozuna. Honestly.
That's fair.
Yeah,
it makes me feel bad for the guy.
Mm-hmm. So another little tidbit for that's going on this weekend. The Cubs don't have to see Mike Trout this weekend, so he stayed in Anaheim to get some work to rehab his groin a little bit. I guess there was some inflammation there or something like that. I fully expected to see him in Chicago this weekend terrorizing the Cubs, but instead we get Albert Pujols hitting a home run.
Terrorizing the Cubs as is tradition.
like he did in the late 2000s, yeah. But
I mean, it didn't make much of a difference for the Brewers, but
no,
I mean,
right? No,
yeah.
that's true because he was out the entire Brewers series, correct?
he went out in the third inning of the first game, so effectively, yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Tommy La Stella, though, my boy gave you a run for your money. Let me tell you, I told y'all, I told you
He's
to watch
good.
for Tommy La Stella. See, now I can root for him because he's not the direct rivalry. It's fine. Someone
Tommy-
give me a jersey.
When he was a Cub, he always rubbed me the wrong way, and I don't know why. I just never liked him.
Why?
And
He's
I
amazing.
don't know.
the guy can hit. He plays bad defense, but he can hit. And I mean, I think that was the thing that why the Braves ended up trading him in the first place is because they needed him to be an everyday fielder, and he really wasn't that. But he's a great teammate. He's a great off the bench guy, and he will give you a professional at bat. I mean, he has a keen eye for the strike zone, and he will see a lot of pitches, which is fantastic, and that's what you want with a guy who comes off the bench. Is you want him to have a professional at bat, see some pitches, and see ball, hit ball, and that's what he did. I mean, I think last year in 2018 he batted over 300 as a coming off the bench. So which is fantastic. You don't see that a whole lot with an NL player who doesn't play a whole lot in the field, who is mainly a bench guy that comes off and gives you at bats. I mean, usually those guys are hitting between 260 and 280, but he was hitting about 300, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm looking at his BRF right now. He played in 123 games last year, and he hit 266 with 19 RBIs, but he's never been an RBI guy. He's an on-base guy.
No, he's an on-base guy.
With 340, which is was really solid for
It's really solid.
bench.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were talking about his defense, and I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about his defense. I became a Tommy La Stella fan because I went to an Iowa Cubs game here where I live. He was playing third base, and he was wearing my favorite number. And what started was, oh, who's the iCub wearing my favorite number? Turned into this guy knows how to hit baseballs, and he was making some really good defensive plays that game. So naturally, he became my favorite.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, yeah. He's I don't know. He always rubbed me the wrong way, and I really don't. I have no good reason for it. I just have I have a personal beef with him that will never be resolved. Especially after this past series. He had 3 freaking home runs. The most he has ever had in his career is 5. He had 3 against the Brewers in 2 games.
Speaking of people hitting home runs, Jason freaking Heyward.
Who is he?
I'd like to talk about this a little bit. The guy had 8 total home runs of all 2018. He has 4, 5 right now. He's batting 3.
He's leading the Cubs in batting average with 351.
I mean, he's
tearing it up.
He's raking, and
he's also leading the Cubs in stolen bases and runs.
Wow.
He's getting on base. He's hitting. And you know what? There was an observation made by Len Casper the other day, where he said he had been watching some film of him the last year he was with the Cardinals, where he was hitting a lot to the opposite field. His hands were getting through his swing, which allowed him to do that. And a lot of his home runs were coming to the opposite field. And he sees a lot of that happening right now, which is really exciting as a Cubs fan. And you hope that he can keep doing that. If Jason Heyward is hitting 20 home runs this year and batting around 300 and scoring runs,
You take that every day.
Holy
huge.
This is what this is the contract that the Cubs signed him for.
Mhm.
And you get the top of that lineup, to where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's scary, because then you're looking at, I mean, it's already probably daunting to a pitcher when they have to go through Bryant, Rizzo, Javi Baez, Schwarber, and then you got a Heyward who's hitting and a Wilson Contreras who's tearing it up right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's your murderer's row right there. I mean, on paper, yes, but we all know
On paper,
that.
Yeah, Chris Bryant
They-
has a huge hole in his swing lately, so we
Right,
got to figure that out.
He's been extending his arms way too much lately, and you know what? And I have a feeling that a lot of it has to do with I've watched quite a few games lately of the Cubs. For some reason, I feel like he's getting a lot of strikes called on the outside that are outside the strike zone right now, and I feel like he's extended his own strike zone because of a lot of those calls that he's seeing on the outside that should technically be called balls. And I feel like that's a lot of it. And I think I read an article to where, like, you're not crazy. Bryant's getting called a lot of strikes on him that should be balls. So,
Yeah.
Well, that tells me it must be something to do with his batting stance. I'm not saying he should change his batting stance at all, but the guy's huge. He's 6'5", and like there's not a whole lot of room for him to be up there. And,
right. Oh, and
Yeah,
it's kind of like Rizzo, where Rizzo gets a lot of those balls on the inside. They're actually strikes called balls because he does stand on top of the plate. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Which is crazy. So,
Yeah.
But that's why he also gets hit like 40 times a year.
Yeah, I was gonna say if anyone's gonna get hit,
Yeah.
it's Bryant.
It's a bold strategy, but yeah,
I mean, it
It works.
it seems to work.
Yeah,
He went yard today. Yeah.
He did. Yeah, there was quite a bit of home runs with the wind blowing out today. You had Wilson Contreras hitting two home runs today. You had Rizzo hitting a home run, and then
David Bodie.
yeah, they had David Bodie connecting with it in his first one of the year. So Bodie McBoatface.
Yep.
Yeah, that was interesting. The Cubs promotion thing of Bodie in a boat. What was the title of that?
It's not the Cubs. It's the I think it's the Tennessee Smokies who were the ones that
Was it really?
It's very good.
have the bobblehead, the Bodie McBoatface.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
So another good story from this week is Quintana. Pitched 7+ innings. He looked good, especially it was surprising in the cold weather on Wednesday. So I was happy to see him. Was that Wednesday or was that last night? Was that Thursday night?
I think it was yesterday.
Was that yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday.
Putting it in together. So yeah, it looked good. The offense looked good. So I mean, we're starting to see a string of things with the Cubbies starting to look good. So.
Well, yeah, and keep in mind they have all new coaching staff this year, so they probably took a lot of time to get used to the way that staff is managing things and their methods for teaching them how to improve themselves.
Right. And it seems that Iapoce has done a nice job because he's worked with a lot of these guys down in the minor leagues. And then you got Tommy Hotovy, who also was one of the coaches down in the minor leagues that has come up. Not so familiar with the veterans out there, but any of the young guys that have come up like Rosario will be familiar with him. I mean, for the most part, the staff is a veteran staff, and those guys probably manage a lot of themselves. I mean, Hamels and Lessers and Quintana and Kyle Hendricks. I mean, those guys have been there. They've been established. Darvish.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I'm not saying it's a completely. I'm not saying it's like they've never seen him before. I'm saying it's a big change from last year.
Mhm.
That was a huge change in pitching philosophy there. I feel, and they probably were just adjusting year over year to that.
Right.
So
I mean, you hear the term regression tossed out a lot. People love to toss out regression in their hot MLB analysis. Takes.
Well, and I'm sure you've heard that a lot with the Brewers pitching staff because those guys have not shown before last year as pitchers who were that dominant. So there is an expectation of regression for the Brewers staff.
I tend to yes and no. The thing is that I don't think there's a lot that can regress from not having a proper base. And I think, we can look at Hader and people are like, I mean, I don't think Hader's going to see any sort of regression. He's still as dominant as ever, and he's shown that. But I don't know if we can necessarily say that someone like Corbin Burnes is regressing when he's been thrust into a new role. And that's kind of the same thing with Woodruff, because Woodruff wasn't starting much at all last year, and they were pitching him out of the bullpen, and he was looking good out of the bullpen in 3 to 4 innings of long relief. But I don't think necessarily he can regress when he's completely getting his role shifted. And Freddie is 22 years old. So again, I don't necessarily think regression is the best word for the Brewers staff, but I think that they need to prove it this year. They need to prove that they belong in the big leagues in the first place. It's more they show flashes, and they've shown yes, I can be a major league quality pitcher, but they need to sustain success. The real regression thing that was being thrown around before the season started was Christian Yelich, and obviously that's still going all right. So people are expecting Yelich they're like, he's never going to hit 330 with 35 home runs and X amount of RBIs, but he's looking well on his way to repeating the kind of season he had last year. So I think with the Brewers staff, it's a lot of prove it that you belong, or we're going to make a move. That's how David Stearns just likes to run his team, is we're going to take this guy, and if he's awful for a stretch of 5 games, we'll send him down. He has options, and we'll bring somebody up, and it's a show me kind of system until we figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, the Brewers are an interesting team to me. I hate that I enjoy watching the team because I am a Cubs fan, but I also live in Milwaukee, so I see it all, and I hear about it all on TV and the radio and stuff like that. But they're an enjoyable team to watch. As a side note, I really love the TV announcers because they are very impartial and they are honest, and they remind me a lot of Len and JD, who do the Cubs broadcasting, where they will call out things on their team as they're announcing when they feel like they've made mistakes or that's the wrong call or anything like that. If they see a good play made by the other team, they'll say that was a good play. They don't play to the bias of the fan base, which I really enjoy.
I think the main reason that they do that is because of Brian Anderson. Brian Anderson is one of the best announcers in the business. He does national stuff all the time. He does the NCAA tournament. He does the playoffs. He does, I think he's going to do the NBA playoffs as well, or he has in the past, but he's incredibly good at being impartial because he's impartial a lot of the time in his job. And that's why he has stayed with Fox Sports Wisconsin for so long, because they let him go off and do these national gigs because that's, he got the chops for it. And he's an excellent announcer. Because they still play up, the homer thing, you have to a little bit. And,
you got to play to the fan base a little bit, but
he's very impartial. And I like that a lot. I think Rock is a little less, Bill Schroeder is a little less so because he played for the Brewers and he's a Milwaukee all-timer, but he's still a very objective announcer and a very good announcer. So I love the TV team. The TV team's been, for as long as I've had conscious thought, it's been the same TV team, which take that for what you will, but it's been a really nice constant to just have these guys who've always been there and who are very well respected nationally in terms of their quality of broadcasting.
Absolutely. And Cubs fans have been very blessed with both radio and TV announcers over the years between Jack Brickhouse. Pat Hughes is just a gem. That guy
is one of the best of all time.
That guy on the radio is just awesome, and and I love that he's gone from Ron Santo to Ron Coomer, who I tell you what, when I was a teenager and when it was Ron Coomer and Matt Stairs on the Cubs, I think I was in high school. And we always used to say that after the games, Coomer and Stairs would go into the clubhouse and they'd do shots of Jack Daniels because they're just like these big burly dudes who seem like the salt of the earth, the country dudes that are just that's exactly who they are. So, but and then Harry Carey and Steve Stone. I wish the Cubs still had Steve Stone. I think he is one of the best color commentary analysis guys in the business. He is just such a smart dude, and the White Sox don't deserve him. They do not deserve Steve Stone.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the White Sox fans only watch him on TV. They don't go to the ballpark. So, I mean, that's
exactly.
Exactly.
So they have 3,000 people in the stands, and that's about it. Which is crazy because, according to that Forbes article, the White Sox are one of the top grossing earning teams in Major League Baseball, with one of the lowest payrolls.
It's just by nature of being in Chicago. You could put, you could put any group of 25 men into uniforms on the south side of Chicago, and they'd make, hundreds of millions of dollars a year just by nature of, I'm going to watch this because I'm, a separatist who hates the Cubs and I want to cheer for a Chicago team. Right. So you cheer for the White Sox. But if we want to talk about radio guys, I mean, we can't leave out Robert Uecker, Bob Uecker is amazing, an all-timer,
and I love listening to him when I'm listening to a Brewers game or on the radio. So, and I know he doesn't do all of them.
No,
which I know he's got this. He's got 2 more years that he's doing radio, and then he's gonna retire. So which sucks. Because he's just like Vin Scully, which I mean, if you never listened to Vin Scully, I'm sorry, but you should go back and just listen to an old Dodgers game and listen to him talk. The man is amazing. He is the only radio broadcaster that does the broadcast all by himself, and had been in the game for so long that he just had story after story after story that he could tell. It was awesome.
I think the way that Scully went out was absolutely perfect too, because his last game was that like division NL West clinching, game 162 for the Dodgers, which was awesome to see.
Before it went to the national broadcast.
Yep. Which was just awesome. Such a nice bow on the top of his career, and he's a legend, absolute legend.
And the Cardinals have had some really good announcers too. Joe. I always like Joe Buck. I know he can sometimes get a bad rep because he's crossed so many sports now. I mean, he does NFL.
I turned on the TV once about a year and a half ago, and Joe Buck was commentating a women's golf tournament.
I feel like people hate Joe Buck because they think it's trendy to hate Joe Buck. They think, it's the NFL season. I hate Joe Buck and Troy Aikman just because everybody else does. But
I just hate Troy Aikman.
I think
Troy Aikman's terrible.
I think Buck is fine.
I don't like Joe Buck just because of like the way he calls the games. Honestly, I think his style of announcing is irritating. It's nothing personal against him. It's just
most Cubs fans hate him because he was associated with the Cardinals for so long, and they feel like there's a bias against the Cubs, especially during the 2016 World Series.
Yeah.
But hey, we're past it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, I still talk about the broadcasters, Mike Shannon. When there's a game without Mike Shannon, I will be the saddest person just because when there is something to be upset about, he is the first one to tell you that there is something to be upset about. I mean, just like the Ozuna call that I was talking about earlier, he doesn't pull his punches too often when it comes to it. It seems like you're watching a game with a friend whenever you listen with Mike Shannon.
Yeah.
So I guess we need a Paul DeJong update because Aaron Mullins has commented Paul DeJong, dark horse MVP candidate.
Well, Paul DeJong is on fire.
To be fair, he put a winky face after it.
I mean, yeah, I'm so excited. I still don't know about MVP candidate, but people do need to be paying more attention to him because I agree with Aaron. Maybe not as much as Aaron is looking forward to it, but he's doing great. I mean, what was his streak? Does anybody know? I almost, for my beat the streak, just started choosing Paul every day, and then I thought I would jinx it.
I have no idea.
I don't know. They were talking about it on the game, and now it's
Merrifield finally lost his.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
Oh, did he get a hit?
Yeah, he went 0 for 6 one game, so he didn't get it.
No, DeYoung is currently on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 game hitting streak.
nice. Nice. Yeah, he's doing great. I'm very happy with him.
And he's got 4 straight multi-hit games. So he's very good. He's excellent. I mean,
Aaron Mullins says 12.
Yeah.
12-game hit streak.
Yeah. Which, I mean, is amazing. I don't want to talk about it too much because I have a knack for jinxing things. So I'm going to knock on wood and cross my fingers so everything cancels itself out.
Well, here's what we can talk about. Brecklyn, the Cardinals are on a 5-game win streak.
Yes.
And they have a day off today, and now they're going into a road trip.
Yes, they are. They're going to go play 2 games against the Reds.
Yep. So what has gone right in the last 5 games that didn't necessarily before on your slow start?
That's a very good question, which makes me wish that I had seen more games to be able to properly answer it. That's a very good question.
This is an open discussion. Anyone?
Yeah, I was going to say, does anybody else? Yeah, go for it.
They've just looked cohesive.
That's what I was going to say, but I feel like I'm always the one to say, like, oh, they're clicking. I mean, we're a little bit further into the season, so maybe they're just...
Nobody's overly struggling. Mm-hmm. So the bullpen is doing okay. The starting pitching is doing okay. The offense is doing okay. They're not... Nobody's, besides Paul DeJong and nobody's... No, Paul DeJong. Not John. John.
Paul DeJong.
Basically, when things have been looking at the Dodgers series, you look at all the box scores, and in the games where LA scored 7 runs, the Cardinals scored 11. And then games where the Cardinals only scored 4, their pitching staff gave up 2 or less. So it's really just like people stepping up or one side of the ball stepping up when the other wasn't. And they just looked like a more competent baseball team over those. I mean, they looked great against the Dodgers,
Kind of like the Cubs have looked the last few games. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, honestly, the offense has been clicking the entire season for the most part, unless they've hit, they had a little, Musgrave the other day, pitched a great game. I mean, that's, you can't, no offense that's doing well can do much against a pitcher who's on like that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you hit a buzzsaw, you hit a buzzsaw. But the bullpen has been doing their job, which has been the key to pretty much the wins that the Cubs have seen lately.
Yeah, it didn't seem like there were really too many things to fix with the Cubs other than the bullpen.
Right. And now that they've been doing their job, not giving up 5 runs in 3 innings, it looks like that's when winning can become sustainable.
Mhm.
Well, it makes it
So
a hell of a lot easier to win games when you don't have them
Right.
giving up that many runs late game.
right.
I mean, that's just why that's why the Brewers won 96 games last year. It was because that bullpen
Right.
was not one to give up, to give up 3, 4, 5 run leads in the 6th inning or later. And that's a bullpen can carry you a long way throughout a season. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you have a terrible bullpen, you're not going to go anywhere. If you have a great bullpen, even if you have a mediocre starting pitching, like starting rotation, see the 2018 Milwaukee Brewers, you can go a long way. So if that bullpen can keep it up, I mean, the Cardinals could be, a pennant contending team this year.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd be excited for it. Oh, that's another thing. I'm sorry. I'm going to say this real quick before I forget, but Andrew Miller hasn't been disappointing me as much as he did originally. That was the big thing for me, is that the things that we were struggling with last season, I thought, well, we tried to address most of them, and then it kind of fell through. And this whole Andrew Miller thing was being very scary, and now I'm glad to see that maybe I don't have to be so mad about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Elliott.
No,
what were you going to say?
I had a question for Blake. So the Milwaukee Brewers run differential right now is at a -6.
Yep.
But they are 8-5 right now. Does that worry you? Besides Kristen Yelich, you guys have been outscored for most of the season.
I mean, we can have the 1-run win discussion. We can have the 1-run wins don't count discussion, but is it worrisome?
Wins count, but is that sustainable? Because you saw what happened to the Cubs last year, because a lot of those 1-run wins started to turn around and become 1-run losses.
And it's mildly concerning, and the biggest concern of it has been just like random bouts of anemic offense. When you look down that lineup and you see Kane, Yelich, Braun, Shaw, Moustakas, Aguilar, and Yasmani freaking Grandal as your 7-hitter, and you're putting up 2 runs against a mediocre Angel starter like Trevor Cahill.
Whoa.
Easy now.
You back up on Tubby Cahill. That's my boy right there.
But it's concerning when you see something like, this kind of team that was built to score runs, scoring nothing, like doing nothing on offense. That part is concerning. The part that's not as run differential is not something that's as concerning for me because of the narrative of last season. I mean, their run differential was not super great last year. That was something that Cubs fans would always point out. Like, got to the All-Star break and they're like, "Oh, run differential, this isn't sustainable." Get to the trade deadline, "Oh, this isn't sustainable." Get to August, "This isn't sustainable." Get to game 163, division champions. Like, it was
sustainable.
It obviously wasn't sustainable.
Hey, you know what? Neither is playing 41 games in 43 days, so y'all can go.
That's true.
Screw yourselves.
As
the Brewers had 5 days off in the month of September, and the Cubs had 0.
I mean, if you put a roof on your stadium, you don't have to make up those games.
You know what?
That's a good point.
It's tradition. Go fuck yourself.
So I think sustainability it's early, and right. I think that run differential will start to law of average itself out, and I think the Brewers offense will start to wake up and put some more runs on the board. But I think that comes back to starting pitching, and if the starting pitchers are not going to step up, or if something doesn't change in the starting pitching department, that's my biggest concern, is just the youth and the inexperience that we're throwing out there every 5 days. And there's it's talent, but if it's talent without experience, it's concerning.
Yeah. Well, speaking of starting pitching and everything, Elliott, how are you feeling about Carl Edwards Jr.?
He's down in Iowa.
No idea.
I say down in Iowa. He's over in Iowa.
He's over. He's over here.
So
it's fine.
This is an interesting topic because, he worked on his mechanics, and he brought in that toe tap, and he had it the entire spring training, and nobody said anything to him until the first game of the year. And then he's got to go from creating that toe tap to help him with his timing and his pitching to going back to what he was doing before, which was the root of his problems last year, which is why he was walking all these guys and, throwing balls, having to throw balls down the middle of the plate and then getting hit bombs against him. I mean, you can't have a guy do that. I mean, it's half his fault and then half, the umpire's fault for not saying anything during spring training, because if it's illegal during the regular season, then it's illegal during spring training. Mm-hmm. Say something to him. But I also feel like it's parts Edwards' fault, because that toe tap became more pronounced as he got closer to the season, instead of doing like either what Kenley Jansen was doing or even Clayton Kershaw, where it's more of a fluid movement to a more pronounced stop, which is what he actually got called out for. He's got to figure out what actually works for him. You can't actually stop in the middle of your movement as you're throwing your pitch. It's got to be just a toe tap. It can't be a stop in the middle of the movement. So he's got to get that figured out down in Iowa, and the umpire's got to work with him to let him know whether or not what he's doing is legal or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't know if you thought that had a heavy hand in contributing to, just like what we were talking about, all these runs being given up late game for the Cubs, that now that he's not there.
I mean, CJ Edwards wasn't the root of the problem. I mean, it was a little bit about the struggling starting pitching, and the bullpen was struggling. It wasn't just CJ. Everybody was struggling. I mean, it spread. It was a virus that spread to everybody, and then they kind of figured it out and regained their confidence. And it's tough to start at a 9-game road trip too. I mean, I don't think there was any other. I mean, the Cubs were one of the last teams to have a home opener. I mean, they just had their home opener on Monday.
Yep.
I had not even realized that until I saw like people posting on Facebook that they were at the Cubs home opener. I'm like, how? It's
right.
It's the middle of April almost.
Right.
They were the 29th team to have it, and then the Red Sox, and we all know how they're doing. So,
yeah, I mean, they've been struggling too. They've been on the road since the start of the season.
They're doing worse than the Cubs are now.
Yeah, well, they're 5-9, so they're starting to win some games. They've won 2 in a row, but Jesus, they got a minus 25 run differential right now, which is very concerning.
See, that is concerning.
Yes.
Yeah, minus 25 is very concerning. Here's my take on run differential in baseball. We've got 2 very separate aspects of the game. You've got pitching and you've got hitting. And you never, let's say you're winning games because your hitting is unstoppable and your pitching is lights out. You're going to rack up run differential like crazy, but that doesn't mean that it's going to translate to future success. And the same thing if you're winning close games and then getting blown out every once in a while. If you're competing in those close games, obviously you're doing something right. Sometimes games just get out of hand. So I think in a sample size this small, run differential isn't that important.
But when you're at a minus 25,
there is
a lot of cause for concern.
That means you're getting blown out with frequency, which means that is a problem.
Right. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I mean, it's the beginning of the season. That's why there's the All-Star break, and then you get the end of the season. So, I mean, everything kind of starts to even out after a couple of weeks. I know. I mean, one of our last episodes was the Doom Boners. So I think everybody's kind of calmed down a little bit. Has realized, hey, we've got 150 games left. We've just played game 11 and 12. So
this is this is the reliable part of the baseball season where all the fans start to sober up a little bit and are like, okay, now we can
Yeah,
now we can go into the
exactly.
season.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you look at the Cardinals where you had Paul Goldschmidt starting out. I mean, hitting dongs, and them starting out hot and then getting a little soft against the San Diego Padres and Manny Machado. And then coming back against the Angels. I mean, in a span of 10 days, I mean, you had that emotional roller coaster for Cardinals fans. The same.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, the Cubs won their first game, and then they shit the bed for a week, and then come back, and now they've won 3 out of 4 games, and the pitching's starting to look good. You have the Brewers who start off hot, and now they're on a little bit of a lull, and then kind of bringing Brewers fans back down to earth, like, okay, maybe we're not so hot shit, and we're a little bit vulnerable in these places. So the NL Central is gonna be a battleground this year for baseball.
Yeah.
And I think every fan who's been around, not excluding you, Brecklyn, I know you're still new, but I mean, it's a long season. There's a lot of games to be played, and I think it's going to be fun.
Well, and I firmly believe that if you took one of the 3 Brewers, Cubs, and Cardinals and stuck them in either the NL West or the NL East, all 3 of those teams would make the playoffs. And I think the fact that this division is so volatile in that and cannibalistic and that everyone beats each other up, and all 3 of our teams are gonna lose a devastating series to the Pirates. I already can, predict that from miles away, but we're all gonna lose a devastating series.
Well, they've got great pitching, so
yeah. And probably the Reds. And I just think this division is so cannibalistic that if you took one of these teams out, put them in the NL East, all 3 go to the playoffs, because I think there's that much talent on all 3 of these teams. It's just they have to play each other 19 times a year.
I mean, yeah. And that's the reason why I'm excited for it. I mean, Elliott, you were just talking about where everyone's calming down for everything. It's going to be interesting to see just the NL Central throughout the entire season, because we're going to be swapping places. I mean, over and over and over again. I mean, right now the Cardinals and the Brewers are tied, and then we've got Pittsburgh after that, and then the Cubs. And do I think that's going to be the order this time next week? Not a chance. I'm excited to see how the standings keep swapping around on each other. And that's why I think each team is going to be especially hard on one another and hard on themselves, because they know how competitive everything is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And now that we're a week and a half, 2 weeks into the season, man, the NL East looks like it's going to be pretty damn good too. So that'll be an interesting division to watch as well. I mean, Washington's pretty damn good. Atlanta, Philly, and holy crap, we're the New York Mets. I mean, yeah.
They also get the benefit of playing the Marlins 19 times. It's barely a Major League Baseball. There's only a Major League Baseball team in name.
I wouldn't even call them a quadruple A team. They are.
They are firmly triple A. Firmly.
Absolutely.
Everyone needs that team to play to make them feel better about themselves, and that just happens to be the Marlins.
We get them 6 times.
Well, the Cubs, don't you guys play them after your Angels series?
I'll check.
Okay, like as you were saying.
I don't know. The thing about the NL East, I think the NL East is good, but I also think that the NL East is not as. It's not going to be as. I think it's going to be it's going to be as competitive as the NL Central, but without as high a caliber of teams at the top. I think the Phillies, the Braves, and the Nats are all solid, but I think they would all finish 3rd in the Central.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced on the Nats.
Yeah, I don't either. There's a lot of people who have picked the Nats to shit, go to the World Series this year, which I do not get at
Why?
Well, they're
Why?
playing the Max Scherzer card, and also a card that's being played is the now that we got rid of Bryce Harper,
He was
we
just a
can-
distraction.
he was a distraction. Now we can go all
He's a
the
top
way.
5 hitter in the league. Like, shut up.
Yeah,
no, there's
I'm not sure about that.
I've never seen a player that gets as much torque on his swing as Bryce Harper. Like the amount of potential energy he puts into his swings is unreal. Like, and
it's like he's the left-handed Javi Baez.
yeah, honestly. Except I think he hits it harder than Javi.
Yeah, he probably does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he's a little bit bigger. So
it's
so
It just has so many rotational aspects of the swing too.
anything else we missed this week?
Oh.
Not that I can think of. Once again, when I think about this week for the Cardinals, I think, yay, we swept the Dodgers, and Marcell Ozuna, what you doing, man?
Legend.
That was kind of my takeaway. Is there anything else you guys wanted to say?
Let's do you consider the Cardinals' upcoming series against the Reds kind of a trap series because they're feeling good going into an off day today? Do you think they'll come out cold tomorrow?
I think anytime the Cardinals go into an off day, it's going to be a wreck the day afterwards. I also, when we're talking about the standings and everything, I'm not too worried about the Reds, but when we're actually playing the Reds, I think that we just kind of assume that we're going to run over them and then they beat us. So it might be that this first series with them could be a sobering experience, but I'm not going to say that because I'm going to say, no, we're going to go in and we're going to sweep them and it's going to be great. And then if I have egg on my face, at least I was a true fan.
Oh, they won't have to face Luis Castillo.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I am very high on him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very high. I've talked about him on the other podcast, but yeah, that changeup is disgusting.
Mhm.
Wait, so the Cardinals were off today
They were because it's a traveling day.
It's really weird.
on a
Yeah.
Friday?
Yeah.
Thursday is the traveling. That is the weirdest shit that I have ever seen in an MLB schedule in my life.
We don't care this year, apparently.
So is this a Saturday, Sunday, Monday series?
I
It's
believe
just
so.
Saturday. It's just Saturday,
It's
Sunday.
a 2-game
So you have
series.
a 2-game
Two-game
series, and then we have
Wow.
Who puts a 2-game series on the weekend?
Right. That's
Yeah.
usually a middle of the week sort of thing.
because we have 2 games against the Reds, then we we play the Brewers for 3 games, and then we play 3 against the Mets, and then we're
Mhm.
back playing the Brewers.
hmm
So yeah,
No, they never do that for the Cubs.
No. Yeah, the Reds and the Brewers first series is on the road, and then they go back home.
Gotcha.
Mm.
All righty.
Anything else anybody wants to say before I take us out?
That's it. I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sounds
I'm
good.
loving
Well,
Lorenzo Kane on Beat the Streak.
Well, I was gonna say, I know it's on the wrong page, but technically this was a Team of Rivals podcast episode. So if you would like to find more of our Team of Rivals episodes, you can find us live on Facebook at our page, or you can find us online at teamofrivalspodcast.com, on Twitter at Team of Rivals Pod, and on Instagram at Team of Rivals Podcast. You can contact us by email at the show at teamofrivalspodcast.com. On Twitter, you can find Elliott at
TOR_Elliott, and I apologize. It's been a lot of Star Wars with Star Wars Celebration going on this weekend. The new trailer hitting today, and then it's going to be a lot of Endgame in like 2 weeks. So, apologize.
And you can find my personal Twitter at carryoncards, spelled Carey, because it's a pun, because I'm clever like that. And then if you're listening to us after the fact, why not give Radio Public a try if you want to throw a few pennies our way every single time that you listen. We'd greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, you can catch us anywhere you listen to podcasts: iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, and Google Podcasts. And then we also have our lovely guest from the other podcast, which I'm also a part of, but because of that, I'll let you guys take it out so I'm not talking the entire time.
Oh, but you're doing so well.
Okay, well then I'll keep going. You can find me on Facebook from this page where this is being broadcast from right now. You can find us on Twitter at Who's Division, and then you can also contact us at at the email whosedivision@gmail.com. You can also find our podcast at all the same places that I mentioned for Team of Rivals, including SoundCloud, Spotify, everywhere that is wonderful and fantastic. So, Blake, we can find you on Twitter at
I think he's frozen.
Blake
Yes, it
Rudabega.
is.
On Twitter at Blake Rudabega. And then Jacob doesn't have a Twitter because he's not cool enough for that. So you can just tweet him at our
Twitter's
regular.
better than Facebook, just FYI.
I mean, it is. Okay.
Also, the Cardinals were off today because they actually playing their games in Mexico.
Oh, that's right. I completely forgot about that. Yeah,
so
it's
that's
just-
Thank you, Zachary Russell, for reminding us of that.
Yes, thank you. All right. Well, with that, we'll get out of here. If you'd like some of your own Team of Rivals gear, don't forget to visit the team store on Zazzle.
No
All right,
soft goods.
nothing that is printed on the shirt. It will be bad. You will not like it. We are telling you that right now. All right. Well, I will see you guys this time next week. Okay. Goodbye.
Hey, bye.